In a collaboration with CBS News, we examine a crime often going without punishment in our country.
Barely half of murder cases in the U.S. get solved. The national homicide clearance rate is at an all-time low. That's according to FBI data.
In the mid-1960s, more than 90% of murders were solved, generally resulting in an arrest. By 1990, the percentage fell into the 60s. Then by 2020, as the number of homicides surged, the national clearance rate dropped to about 50% for the first time ever.
And our analysis with CBS News also discovered a difference by race. The national homicide clearance rate for white victims keeps improving. That's the blue line at the top there. Meantime, the rate of solving murders for Black and Hispanic victims is much lower. Those are the two lines at the bottom.
So we wanted to know what's happening locally. Our investigation discovered Philadelphia's clearance rate is lower than the national average. CBS 3's Joe Holden digs into why and shares how this has a lasting impact on the families of victims.
Monique Irvis weaves through emotions of pain, sadness, and anger, chatting with me on the stoop of her Southwest Philadelphia home. Summer is here, and that means another tough anniversary is on the horizon.
So those two times of the year is very, very hard.
This mom is already bracing for August 1st. It's the date in 2007 her son Eric Woods was shot and killed. He was 19. Eric's birthday is Christmas Day, another painful day on the calendar.
It's like 15 years of pain, 15 years of anger.
The case has languished. Irvis described a tense, difficult relationship with the Philadelphia Police Department.
I'm very angry. I've been trying to say I'm not angry. I don't know, but it does. It just angers me.
It's been too long.
It's been too long.
What grade would you give the police department in their handling of this?
A 0. A 0.
The case of Eric Woods, shot and killed after a neighborhood basketball game in Southwest Philly, is one of the city's many unsolved murders.
You guys have been maxed out.
Maxed out. The entire pandemic, we've been maxed out.
Heather Arias with the agency Philadelphia Anti-Violence Partnership is troubled by numbers showing Philadelphia is struggling to solve its homicides. It's growing increasingly worse, and more data uncovered by CBS News shows the department over the last couple years is solving only slightly more than a quarter of murders involving Black victims, compared with figures between 60 and 80% for white victims.
What's worse than going through losing somebody to a homicide is losing someone to a homicide and then not having any answers. And then the time going by, life going on, and you still are left with no answers.
CBS 3 pressed the department for specific data. Beginning in 2014, homicide numbers began a steady rise. 249 8 years ago, 317 by 2017, and then department officials say there was an explosion. The murder rate in Philadelphia was 499 in 2020, a 40% increase from 2019.
Meanwhile, homicide clearance rates, what the department considers solving or closing a case, have been steadily dropping over the last few years, and 2020 was a low point. Philadelphia police solved only 42% of murder cases.
Commissioner Danielle Outlaw has been at the helm of the 6,600 member force for 2.5 years. She called the 2020 clearance rate alarming.
Because it's one that jumps off the page so readily, it forces us to say, what's going on here? Why is this happening?
Homicide unit officials tell CBS 3 there are a total of 75 detectives who make up the entire unit. Of that number, 60 are assigned new investigations. But because of the surge of killings in 2020 and 2021, those same investigators are getting more and more cases. The captain explains that is bringing down the clearance rate.
It's sometimes challenging to identify those who are responsible, whether it's because of the mask or witnesses not coming forward. So that means we're relying on other forms of forensic evidence to bolster our cases.
While the commissioner added a dozen more detectives to the homicide unit after her 2020 arrival, she described the department technologically challenged. She said the click-click of a typewriter in the unit was among the first sobering eye and ear openers.
And sure enough, because it was so distracting. I turned around and someone was typing on a typewriter.
She links technology advances to understanding when a social media-fueled retaliatory killing might happen and where.
We didn't have analysts regularly working these cases and following them on social media to see what they were posting. We now do. But what are we doing technologically to make sure that we're keeping up?
Natasha McGlynn is executive director at Anti-Violence Philadelphia Partnership. We visited the office as the city is again pacing closely to stats for 2021, the worst year on record for murder.
I do think it's going to get worse before it gets better. Are we approaching the bottom? I want to be cautiously optimistic and say that we are.
Her agency helps families navigate the days and weeks, sometimes years after a loved one is killed. She is barely able to hide her frustration, telling me there is a breakdown in owning the problem, and it's a problem disproportionately affecting those in the Black and brown community.
It should be the state's responsibility. There needs to be accountability, and it's lacking.
The commissioner says there's a growing sense of hopelessness.
What hurts me is that young men have looked me in my eye and said, there's nothing you can do to fix this.
That's certainly something Monique Irvis knows. Solving her son's murder feels elusive.
It changed my life a lot.
The killings are piling up.
You're not okay.
No.
Crime without punishment.
Do you have hope that someone can come through for you and your family?
I'm trying to have hope, but I don't have any. I don't have any hope in the system.
This is Joe Holden, CBS 3 Eyewitness News.
What we found locally as part of a CBS News investigation of the reasons for unsolved murders across the country. You can find that special report at cbsphilly.com. Look for Crime Without Punishment.